A furious blizzard hammered against the walls of Carlos's isolated cabin, its arctic winds rattling the old timber frame. Inside, the retired rescuer settled closer to the crackling hearth, the firelight casting dancing shadows across the room. The storm had trapped him for days, the profound silence broken only by the hiss and pop of burning wood. Then, cutting through the quiet, came a faint, desperate scratching. Carlos lowered his mug, his brow furrowed as he strained to listen. The sound came again, this time accompanied by a muffled whine. His heart quickened as he realized it was coming from his front door. Moving cautiously towards the entrance, Carlos peered through the glass. There, braced against the swirling snow, was a German shepherd, her body trembling violently from the cold. Huddled beneath her protective stance were two tiny puppies, barely visible in the tempest. Ice clung to her fur, and her breath came in ghostly clouds as her pleading eyes locked with his. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the doorknob. He knew that opening the door meant inviting trouble into his quiet sanctuary. But as he met her gaze, a deep, instinctual compassion stirred within him. The choice he was about to make would change all of their lives forever. His pulse hammered as he stood at the threshold, the storm roaring outside. The shivering dog's breath fogged the glass, her body a frail shield for the pups huddled against the mounting snow. Her ribs were stark beneath her frozen coat, and her eyes held a desperate mix of terror and hope. "What happened to you?" Carlos murmured, his own breath misting in the frigid air. Acting on pure instinct, he turned the knob. As the door creaked open, a blast of icy wind tore through the cabin. The German shepherd held her ground, paws planted firmly in the snow, her gaze fixed on Carlos, uncertain if she could trust him. "Come on, get in," he urged gently, crouching to seem less threatening. "You'll freeze out there." She let out a low whine, glancing back at her pups, before taking a cautious step forward. She nudged one with her snout, urging it to follow. When the smaller pup stumbled, its tiny legs failing in the deep snow, the mother tenderly scooped it up by the scruff of its neck and carried it inside, the other scrambling close behind. Once they were clear, Carlos shut the door, sealing out the storm's relentless howl. The sudden warmth of the cabin made the shepherd tremble even more as her body struggled to adjust. Carlos quickly grabbed an old blanket from the sofa and gently draped it over her and the puppies. She flinched at first, but realizing his gentle intent, she let out a shuddering sigh and settled near the fire, curling protectively around her little ones. Carlos knelt beside her, his mind racing. The pups were so fragile, their eyes barely open, their tiny chests rising and falling with labored breaths. He reached out to stroke one, but the mother's low, warning growl stopped him. It was a stark reminder of her mistrust. "Okay, girl, I get it," he whispered, holding his hands up in a gesture of peace. "You're a good mother. You've been through hell, haven't you?" He rose and went to the kitchen, filling a bowl with warm water and placing it near her. Giving her space, he watched as she eyed him warily, before finally leaning in to lap at the water, her pups clustered at her side. Where had she come from? How had she ended up in a storm this violent with two newborns? Her skeletal frame spoke of a long, lonely struggle. That she had survived at all was nothing short of a miracle. Despite his lifelong affection for dogs, his quiet retirement hadn't prepared him for this. Yet, as he looked at her exhausted form and the fierce, protective way she guarded her young, he knew he couldn't turn her away. "You've got a fighter's spirit," Carlos murmured. "Looks like we're both survivors." As the night deepened, he made them comfortable, laying down towels for the pups, setting out a small bowl of food for the mother, and stoking the fire to maintain a gentle warmth. The German Shepherd watched his every move, but gradually, her tense posture softened. Her head eventually sank onto the blanket, her eyelids fluttering closed. Sitting in his armchair, with the soft crackle of the fire for company, Carlos felt a forgotten sense of purpose. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for tonight, they were safe. As the storm raged on, he made a silent vow that this mother and her pups would find sanctuary under his roof. At dawn, Carlos awoke to the sound of soft whimpers and the dying embers of the fire. The storm had broken, leaving a glittering blanket of snow bathed in the early morning light. His first thought was of his unexpected guests. Near the hearth, the German Shepherd was still curled around her puppies. Her amber eyes opened slowly and met his. The desperation from the night before was gone, replaced by a quiet caution. "Good morning, girl," Carlos said warmly, stretching as he walked to the kitchen. "Let's see about getting you some real food." He found a can of chicken soup in the pantry. Simple but nourishing. After warming it on the stove, he carefully set a bowl beside her. She lifted her head, sniffed the offering, and then began to eat. Determined to do more, Carlos called the local veterinary clinic. "Hello, this is Carlos Martins," he said when the receptionist answered. "I have a German Shepherd and her 2 newborn pups here. They're in rough shape. Is there any way you can see them?" The receptionist's voice was kind but firm. "Of course, Mr. Martins. We can fit you in this afternoon. Bring them in, and we'll do our best." Relieved, Carlos turned to the dog, who was now gently cleaning her pups. "Hear that, girl? We're going to get you some help." At the clinic, Dr. Monroe examined the mother and pups with skilled hands. "She's severely malnourished," the vet commented, "but she's tough. These pups are lucky she found you." Looking at Carlos, she added, "She's been through a lot. With the right care, she'll recover. Do you have any idea where she came from?" Carlos shook his head. "She just showed up on my doorstep last night. I couldn't leave her in the cold." Dr. Monroe smiled. "You did the right thing." Back in the warmth of the cabin, the mother was visibly calmer. The pups, now fed, squirmed happily against her. He sat nearby, and for the first time, she allowed him to approach, her eyes softening as he gently stroked her head. "You're safe now," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what you've been through, but you have a home here for as long as you need it." For the first time, the dog relaxed into his touch, her body no longer rigid with fear. A warmth spread through Carlos's chest. He had taken in a half-frozen stray and her pups, and in doing so had unexpectedly changed his own life. In the days that followed, a quiet rhythm of healing and trust settled over the cabin. The German Shepherd, whom Carlos had begun to call Luna, slowly regained her strength. Her once dull eyes began to shine, and the pups, now named Flurry and Imber, grew more energetic with each passing day. Carlos spent hours just sitting on the rug by the fire, allowing Luna to grow accustomed to his presence. At first, she watched him with a guarded intensity. But slowly, the walls around her heart began to crumble. Her warning growls softened into quiet sighs, and eventually, she accepted his gentle touch without flinching. One evening, as Carlos watched the flames dance in the hearth, he saw Luna resting nearby, her head on her paws, while Flurry and Imber tumbled playfully around her. He couldn't help but smile. "You've got some tough little ones, Luna," he said softly. Luna lifted her head, her eyes conveying a silent gratitude that touched him deeply. He reached out to stroke her, and to his delight, she leaned into his hand, finally letting go of her fear. Weeks passed, and Luna's transformation was astounding. Her coat, once thin and matted, grew thick and glossy. She played gently with her pups, nudging them with her nose and watching with pride as they romped through the cabin. Carlos, too, had changed. After years of solitary retirement, Luna and her pups had breathed new life into his world. The quiet, lonely nights were now filled with playful yips and the soft padding of paws on the wooden floor. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed having a purpose. One afternoon, returning from chopping wood, he saw Luna at the window, her nose pressed against the glass, her tail giving a slight, happy wag. When he came inside, she met him at the door, nudging his hand with her snout. It was the first time she had initiated contact. "Well, you're full of surprises today," he laughed, kneeling to scratch behind her ears. Luna leaned into his touch, her tail wagging more vigorously as Flurry and Ember barked joyfully at his feet. That night, gathered by the fire, Carlos looked at Luna and spoke from the heart. "I don't know where you came from, girl, but I'm glad you found me. You and your little ones are family now." Luna lifted her head, her eyes meeting his in a silent understanding that needed no words. With a soft sigh, she rested her head on his lap, completely at ease for the first time. Carlos's heart swelled as he stroked her fur. He never could have imagined that rescuing a stray dog would, in turn, so deeply rescue him. But here, in the warmth of the fire, surrounded by his new family, he realized they had given him something he had long been missing: companionship, purpose, and a reason to hope again. Chapter 4. Echoes of the Past. Morning light filtered through the cabin windows, casting golden shafts across the floor, where Flurry and Ember tumbled playfully together. Luna rested nearby, her eyes half closed in a state of peaceful repose, though her ears remained alert, twitching at every faint sound. Standing at the counter with a cup of coffee, Carlos watched them, a sense of contentment washing over him that he hadn't felt in a long, long time. But beneath the tranquility, a persistent question gnawed at him. Where did Luna come from? Her lean frame, the faint scars on her coat, and her guarded demeanor all pointed to a life of hardship. He couldn't shake the feeling that whoever was responsible for her suffering might still be out there, lurking. That afternoon, Carlos decided to take Luna and the puppies outside. The snow was beginning to melt, revealing patches of frozen earth beneath. Luna stepped cautiously onto the porch, sniffing the air as if testing for danger, while the clumsy pups trotted excitedly behind her. "You're safe now," he assured her softly. "Nothing is going to hurt you here." But as they moved a short distance from the cabin, Luna froze. Her ears shot up, her body tensed, her nose pointing toward the edge of the forest. Carlos followed her gaze, his own posture stiffening. "What is it?" he asked, moving closer. A low growl rumbled in her chest, the fur along her spine bristling. Carlos strained his eyes, peering between the trees, but saw nothing. Yet Luna's protective stance told him everything he needed to know. Something was wrong. Acting quickly, Carlos scooped the puppies into his arms and guided Luna back to the safety of the cabin. Once inside, he locked the door and drew the curtains, his heart pounding. But Luna continued to pace by the window, her eyes fixed on the darkening woods. Later, as Carlos settled by the fire, the unease lingered. Luna stayed close and the puppies nestled against her, but she remained vigilant, her gaze snapping to the door at every distant sound. Carlos gently stroked her ears. "You weren't just imagining things, were you?" he whispered. "You've seen something like that before." As he watched the flames dance, he wondered what Luna must have endured to become so guarded. Had she been abandoned? Hurt? The thought made his fists clench. Whoever had harmed her had no right. Determined to find answers, Carlos loaded Luna and the pups into his truck the next day and headed into town. The local animal shelter was a modest but well-kept place, run by volunteers who knew most of the animals in the area. At the front desk, Carlos showed a picture of Luna and her pups to a kind-faced receptionist in her 40s named Sarah. "I found her outside my cabin," he explained. "Has anyone reported her missing? Do you recognize her?" Sarah studied the photo for a moment before shaking her head. "I don't recognize her specifically, but we see dogs like her all the time. There are a lot of backyard breeders around here who keep animals in deplorable conditions. When they're no longer profitable, they just dump them." Carlos's anger simmered. "So you think she was abandoned?" Sarah nodded grimly. "It happens more than you'd think. She's lucky she found you." The drive back to the cabin was heavy with a somber silence. Sarah's words echoed in Carlos's mind. Luna had been abandoned, discarded as if she were worthless. But she wasn't worthless. Not to her puppies, and not to him. He resolved then and there that she would never feel unwanted again. When they arrived, Luna hopped out of the truck and immediately began sniffing the air, her tail giving a slight, tentative wag. Flurry and Ember followed, their little legs struggling to keep up. Watching them, Carlos's heart filled with a mixture of indignation and hope. "You're safe now," he said firmly, his gaze meeting Luna's. "No one is ever going to hurt you again." Luna looked back at him, and for the first time, her amber eyes softened. In that moment, Carlos made a silent vow. Whoever had broken her would not win. Over the next few days, a restless quiet settled over the cabin. Luna began to relax, her trust in Carlos growing with each passing day. Flurry and Ember started exploring every corner of the house with joyful curiosity, their playful yips echoing through the rooms. Yet, despite the newfound warmth, Carlos couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. One evening, as he stood at the window, stroking Luna's head while the puppies slept by the fire, the moonlight cast long shadows across the snow outside. That's when he saw it. A figure, standing at the edge of the woods. Carlos's heart leaped into his throat. He squinted, trying to make out the shape. It was tall, cloaked in darkness, and unmistakably human, and it was watching them. Luna let out a low growl. Carlos reached for his phone, dialing the local sheriff. "This is Carlos Martins," he whispered. "There's someone outside my cabin. I don't know who it is, but they've been standing at the tree line for a while now." The dispatcher assured him a deputy was on the way, but Carlos gripped the phone tightly. Something about this felt too deliberate, too personal. The minutes crawled by as he waited. Luna stayed by the door, her low growls a constant warning, while Carlos paced, his eyes darting to the window. Finally, headlights cut through the darkness. Carlos breathed a sigh of relief as the deputy's car pulled into the driveway. Deputy Carter, a sharp woman with watchful eyes, stepped out. Carlos met her at the door and explained what he'd seen. "This wasn't just someone passing through," he insisted. "They were watching us." Deputy Carter nodded, her hand resting on her flashlight. "I'll check the area. You stay inside and keep the doors locked." Carlos nodded, his stomach twisting, as he watched her disappear into the woods, the beam of her flashlight slicing through the dark. He stood by the window, fists clenched, Luna pressed against his leg, her eyes fixed on the same spot. When Deputy Carter returned, her expression was grim. "There's no one there now," she reported, "but I found a fresh set of tracks leading right to the edge of your property. Whoever it was, they were definitely watching you." Carlos swallowed hard. "Did you find anything else?" She hesitated. There was an old length of rope tied to one of the trees. Looked like it had been used recently. It seems someone might be camping out there in the woods. The thought sent a chill down Carlos's spine. "Do you think they'll be back?" "I can't say for sure," she replied. "But I'll have patrols swing by more often. If you see anything, you call immediately." After she left, the cabin felt heavy with silence. Carlos checked every lock on the doors and windows, his mind racing. Who was out there? And what did they want with him and Luna? He settled into a chair, and Luna came over, resting her head on his knee. He stroked her fur. "Don't you worry, girl," he whispered. "I won't let anyone hurt you or these pups." Luna's amber eyes met his, and in their depths, he saw a flicker of fear and recognition, as if she was remembering something from a past she couldn't escape. Sleep eluded Carlos that night. He stayed by the window, his rifle propped against the wall, keeping watch. Luna rested at his feet, her ears twitching at every sound, while Flurry and Ember slept peacefully by the fire, oblivious to the danger. As the hours passed, Carlos renewed his silent vow. No matter who or what came for them, he would protect Luna and her puppies. They were his family now, and he wouldn't let this second chance be taken from them. The first rays of morning were filtering through the curtains. Carlos, weary from a sleepless night, was making coffee when Luna shot to the front door, ears pricked, a low growl rumbling in her chest. Carlos froze, his hand hovering over the coffee pot. Grabbing his rifle from the corner, he crept to the window and pulled back the curtain just enough to see. His stomach dropped. The figure was back. And this time it was closer, standing just beyond the edge of his porch. "Damn it," Carlos muttered, gripping the rifle. He looked at Luna. "Stay," he commanded, though he knew she might not listen. Easing the door open, he stepped onto the porch, the frost crunching under his boots. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice steady despite the fear coiling in his gut. "This is private property." The figure didn't move at first. Then, it took a step forward, revealing a man in his 40s, his face shadowed by the hood of a worn jacket. In one hand, he held a length of rope. A confident smirk played on his lips. "That's my dog," the man said, his tone quiet, but dripping with menace. "I've been looking for her." Carlos's blood ran cold. "Your dog?" he shot back. "She showed up on my doorstep, half dead with 2 pups. If she's yours, why was she in that condition?" The man just shrugged, taking another step. "Things happen. I'm here to take her back." Carlos raised the rifle slightly, aiming it at the man's chest. "You're not taking her. She's not yours anymore." The man's smirk faltered. He stopped. "You don't know what you're dealing with, old man. That dog is trouble. She's better off with me." Carlos tightened his grip on the rifle. "No. She's better off with someone who gives a damn. Now get off my property before you regret it." Just then, Luna appeared in the doorway, her body rigid, her teeth bared in a deep, guttural snarl that echoed in the cold morning air. The man's smirk vanished completely, replaced by a flicker of fear. "Luna, back!" Carlos ordered. But she was fixated on the man, and in that instant, Carlos understood. This wasn't a stranger. This was someone from her past, someone who had hurt her. The man took a step back, the rope slipping from his grasp. "You've made a mistake, old man," he stammered, his voice shaking. "You have no idea what that dog is capable of." Carlos stepped forward, the rifle still level. "The only mistake here was you thinking you could just come back and take her. She's not going anywhere. Neither are the pups. Now get out of here, before I make you." The man hesitated, his eyes darting between Carlos and the snarling dog. Then he turned and retreated into the woods. Carlos watched until he was gone. He quickly bolted the door and knelt beside Luna, who was still standing guard. "He's gone," Carlos murmured, stroking her head. "You did good, girl. You kept us safe." Luna let out a shaky breath, leaning into his hand. By the fire, Flurry and Ember stirred, their soft yips breaking the tension. Carlos gathered the puppies and brought them to Luna, watching as she curled protectively around them. That evening, with the fire crackling warmly, Carlos sat with Luna and her puppies beside him. He knew the man might return, but he also knew that this time, Luna wouldn't run. She had found her home, her family, her courage. And in her, Carlos had found something he'd long since forgotten. A reason to fight, to protect, and to love. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive. Together, they had faced the darkness, and together, they would face whatever came next. Luna's journey, from a frozen doorstep to a warm hearth, was nothing short of a miracle. Her resilience, the bond she formed with Carlos, and her unwavering devotion to her pups showed the transformative power of care and trust. They overcame danger and the lingering shadows of Luna's past, proving that even in the darkest of times, hope endures. Stories like Luna's remind us of the extraordinary courage of animals and the profound impact they have on our lives. If this story has touched your heart, let it inspire you to act. Consider adopting, supporting your local shelter, or simply sharing this story to spread awareness. Subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with others who believe in tales of bravery and second chances. Together, we can make a difference, one rescue at a time. Thank you for being a part of this journey.